Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Extra Time U.S. Soccer Podcast. My name's Tim Greenberg. I'm here, joined by my brother, Ryan Greenberg, and we are here to bring you guys a little bit of discussion about this Mexico game that we just watched, and a little bit more on CONCACAF going forward. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing great. So obviously the first thing, man, so Ryan and I watched this game together. It was just exciting. Ryan, before we get into it, where does this rank on out of all the U.S. games you've had to watch, World Cups included? Where does this game rank for you?
It's got it ranks high. One, it's Mexico, which U.S. rivals, big rivalry going back hundred years. So any game against Mexico where the U.S. gets a win is obviously ranked high. But just their performance in general throughout the whole game really had me thinking they can compete pretty well on the world stage. So it's definitely in the top five.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't remember if you and I were still in the conversation. Like I said, Ryan and I watched this game together. We're streaming just like this, and I remember when the game ended, just sitting on my couch and thinking to myself, I've never been so relieved to have so much fun watching a U.S. soccer game where not only did we win a key game, we made it look easy, and we turned our qualifying into not this stressful situation, right? We're avoiding this 5 years ago, playing Panama, wondering what in the world is going on.
Yeah.
Why can't we get points out of anywhere? So obviously the first big talking point is Dos a Cero, right? You hear the fans chanting it. This is Mexico, like you said. This is a big team, previously ranked top 10 in the world. Mexico's been a dominant country, on the world stage and in CONCACAF forever. We even have the man in the mirror comments made by Ochoa. So, I mean, this is huge.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big win. And if at the start of qualifying, anyone said the U.S. is going to play every team once, going to go through, and the U.S. is going to be in first place after all those games, I wouldn't have believed him because there's no reason to. The U.S. has never proved in qualifying that they can lead the group, but then after they play everyone, they're ahead of Mexico because they beat them the last game, and we got the extra goal differential, so we're sitting in first place in the group, which is something that I don't think I ever would have believed before any of the games even started.
Correct. And I think just to kind of unpack that statement a little bit, because I'm sure that there are some people going like, no, it was believable, it was believable. But you think about the U.S.'s history, and maybe not at home, but on the road when we play some of these teams. And to say that the United States would be sitting in first place isn't to say that you were guessing at that moment we were going to beat Mexico. It was that we were going to perform better against the other countries than Mexico was going to perform, which statistically hasn't happened. Mexico beats the teams that we're always walking away with on a draw. Maybe it's climate, maybe it's just the history, maybe it's just the rough nature of the matches or the experience, whatever it chalks up to. But I think you're absolutely right. And this is sort of like a side note, but I think the other team that's really standing out right now is Canada. I think if you had told
Yes.
me that Canada was going to be in the top three at the end of this first rotation, I would have like laughed you off the face of the earth. And it's probably because, of my own shame, I haven't been paying enough attention to Canada, especially with the front three that they have in the strike force that is producing overseas.
hmm No, yeah, and Canada doesn't have a loss yet, and every other team in the group does. So that's obviously something that's like, whoa, who no one I think would have picked Canada to play 7 games, no losses, um, really standing out. So it's going to be tough, and I know the U.S. has to play them again in Canada, so that's obviously going to be an important game for the U.S. Just a point there is probably huge. So
Right, because the first time around playing Canada, we don't know where Canada's going to rank, so we walk away with that win. We previously played them in the Gold Cup. We got the win there, even though that was a significantly tighter game than I was expecting it to be. We still did what we needed to do. We came in, we got the 3 points. Granted, it was at home, but now looking at what the tables look like, going to Canada this time might be a completely different show.
correct, yeah, and Canada has played well in at home. So that's obviously something you have to worry about. But any point on the road is a well-earned point. And people tend to get upset where it's like the U.S. travels to Costa Rica or El Salvador, somewhere like that, and they draw. And it's not necessarily the end of the world. You're not at home. It's not easy playing on the road, especially soccer. Pitches are different, sometimes in bad conditions, and guys don't sleep that well in hotels, don't eat well because you're in a different country. And those are the things you got to look at. It's like, yes, okay, yeah, we tied El Salvador in El Salvador, but it's like we were on the road, we got a point. That's big. Get the 3 points at home, get 1 point on the road if you can, and that's enough to bring you through to qualifying.
It is enough to bring you through the qualifying. And I know that, you and I are going to touch base on that a little bit later because we obviously have our sort of like irritations with the squads that Berhalter was lining up in those games. And you and I are probably in agreement with the rest of the listening base and the player base for United States soccer believe that it was sort of kind of like unacceptable to walk away without the 3 points. But to take your statement and really actually just like let it simmer and think about it, it's absolutely right to believe that if you took all of the games you play against the teams, right, and you say we're going to beat El Salvador at home and we're going to tie them on the road, that's 4 points to El Salvador's 1 point. That means we're better than that team, and that team is not knocking us out, right? So if you just do that with every team, you can even get away with some losses knowing that you're still going to be sitting atop the table. So I hear what you're saying, and I know that we're gonna continue to sort of touch base on all those things, but let's get back to this Mexico game and think, when you saw the overall team performance, how did you feel compared to the other games?
Oh, the U.S. Mexico game, starting probably about 30 minutes into the first half, the U.S. started to look much better than the Mexico side, and not just we're better than them, so we should win the game. It was like watching the U.S. play like an unranked, like a nobody in a friendly, and we're starting our A guys. They're playing like their C squad. And not to take anything away from Mexico. Mexico's a good team. Obviously, they're up there in the top of our bracket. But it looked like the U.S. knew exactly how to play against them, and they took their strategy and they worked it to a T. They played perfectly, and they actually looked like they could compete in the World Cup and actually have a shot of making it to a deep round in the World Cup if they could continue to play like that consistently.
Correct. And I liked, especially what I enjoyed watching from the United States was, like you said, this sense of understanding in how to attack the Mexican team. So they had a back four that had been playing together and that was not going to give up anything. Right? I think one of the things that you and I consistently said throughout the entire game was how impressed we were with Walker Zimmerman. Not that we didn't mention both of the Robinsons, right? Not that we didn't mention, and I'm going to completely blank right now on some of the names for some of these guys, but we sat here and we're like, Robinson and Robinson played great. Walker Zimmerman played great. Just the absolutely great soccer. We have some other backs in there that had played fantastic too, right? I think with Yedlin.
Yedlin was in there.
I know that, yeah, and that's why I'm forgetting his name because you know how I feel about Yedlin. We'll get into that, but we had a back four that Mexico's chances in the past had been just outrageous, right? Just absolutely outrageous chances. And in here, all of a sudden, we see a back four that's composed. They're dissolving Mexico's chances. They're absorbing the impact. And then they're giving the ball into this midfield that has a lot of talent to have the ball at their feet and wants to knock it around. And then you just look at the strike force you have. This is the first time we've had a set of strikers that when they get the ball, they go forward. Tim Weah really impressed me. And I love Brendan Aronson. I love having him up on the flank. And then I think you and I have both sort of grown in favor of Ricardo Pepi.
Oh, yeah. Watching him, seeing him start some games and having no idea who he is at all. And then watching him play some games and going, oh, this guy's actually, pretty decent. And then hearing he's such a young player, not very experienced on the world stage, but yet he seems so composed and knows what to do when he's got the ball at his feet, and he does have that ability to finish in that final third, which is something the U.S. hasn't had a lot of, guys that get the ball at their feet, make the right decision, and can put the ball in the back of the net.
Right. And we think about, I like that you touched on the age group of some of these players, because the United States, we're looking at like the average age is under 23, I believe, maybe under 22 years old. And most of the time, and I know that, people know that I'm going to touch on this a lot. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast. And Ryan shares a lot of my sentiment with this. I'm not a huge fan of having to listen to the commentators that the American media seems to pick. Only want to bring up our young inexperience in games we lose and games that we should have performed better in. Nobody was jumping on, hey, look at these guys that are under 23 years old that just absolutely spanked Mexico. Right? Look at this young task force of guys that are all playing overseas that,
but and I do agree with you that it's like, yeah, they're quick to jump on the negatives, but you have to think, okay, so we did beat Mexico with this young squad, right? So why aren't they performing against the other teams? Because in everyone's eye, Mexico's the best team in the group. There's no reason to say Mexico isn't the best team in the group. They've been the best team in the group for many years, and to anyone that knows enough about soccer, when you look at the division with the 8 teams that are in it, everyone would be like, oh yeah, Mexico's the best team. But this year, for World Cup qualifying, we're running into Mexico might not be the best team. The U.S. is up there. Canada's playing really well. Even Panama is very strong. So it's more of, we've got more teams that are even with each other than we have one team that's just that much better than everyone. And I think the announcers and the commentators think, oh, we beat Mexico, guys should be able to play that way every game. So now why did we tie El Salvador, or why did we tie Canada, and why did we lose to Panama? Because we played this well against Mexico. Mexico's the best team in the group. We should just be absolutely rolling over everyone else.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think you're right that sometimes we do have to tone it back and think, is this the expectation, or was this a one of? And so it kind of goes into the next point that I had was this a U.S. victory, or was this a Mexico loss? Was this a game that Mexico walked into and maybe they weren't prepared, right? We think about Memo Ochoa's comment, right, that the United States is looking at Mexico wanting to be Mexico, right? You have that man in the mirror comment. Christian Pulisic showing his shirt after that goal. If you didn't look into that, look into it. It's pretty spicy stuff. But is that what happened, or was this just the Americans on home soil taking advantage of stringing everything together?
It's a U.S. win. It's not a Mexico loss because, again, you go back to the points on the road are hard to get, and every other sport in playoffs, there's always the saying, you're never in trouble until you lose at home. Right?
Yeah,
so Mexico doesn't lose at home here. Yeah, they lose 2-0 to the U.S. team, and yes, it was a pretty dominant performance by the U.S. where Mexico, I don't think, really had an opportunity to score, which people could see as a Mexico defeat. But again, the game's played in, was it Cincinnati?
Yeah, it was played here and out in Ohio, Cincinnati, yeah.
Okay, so games in Cincinnati, there's going to be Mexico fans there because there always is. But you have to think, U.S. soil, more U.S. fans than Mexico fans.
USA showed up that game.
So it's definitely more a U.S. victory than it is a Mexico loss, because Mexico not losing at home, they still get to play us at home. So then that's a whole different story. If we have the same performance against them again when we're in Mexico, I definitely think that proves it's now a Mexico loss, and the U.S. might now be in a spot where we're just better than them.
I agree, and I think that the reason this victory was so much more exciting, not just a victory over Mexico, right? Not just a victory in World Cup qualifying, the third victory in a row.
In the same calendar year.
In the same calendar year, and all 3 of those matches, the previous 2, a final and a semifinal.
Yeah.
Or were they both finals? I can't remember.
I think they were both. I think they were both finals.
Was Canada one of the finals? I can't remember, but
no.
Maybe they were both finals.
I think they were both finals. It was definitely Mexico in the Gold Cup final,
I can
and that
look real
game was
quick.
a 1-0 victory with a late goal, I believe.
So we played. Yes, they were both finals. Yep. So the
Yeah.
CONCACAF Gold Cup final 1-0, and then the Nations League final 3-2, and then
Mm-hmm.
now a World Cup qualifier.
2-0.
Yeah, 2-0. So yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and I think you're absolutely right that it's going to be a real testament to America's talent, and sort of I'm not even gonna go with talent, like perseverance when we go into the Azteca, because we know what that has been like, and it's not, and it whether you think this is a good thing or a bad thing, this is a completely subjective sort of viewpoint to look at, but it's not just soccer when you get down there. I mean, we're talking garbage getting thrown at you, tempers flaring, hard fouls, hard tackles, questionable refereeing. Some games it feels like no refereeing at all, and you're not even throwing into COVID protocols with how long you're staying in the new city. You're not looking at the elevation change. I know we used to train in Denver. We had a lot of our practices and camps in Denver when we'd go into the Azteca, not just because of the elevation, but because the air quality was so poor, and just the players getting used to it. So, I not to sort of like go off on that tangent, but yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of other things
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah,
factor into that.
yeah, that goes back to the whole guys don't eat well because you're in a different country. Guys definitely aren't sleeping. They probably don't. Some of them might not sleep at all, right? Because you're different country knows you're coming, and that obviously makes it hard because fans are going to do everything they can to make it a nightmare for the other team.
Right, and we don't know what their travel schedule is like. We don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
you're looking at we're going what, home away home. So you're looking at, the guys are going to play Mexico. They're going to pack their stuff up in a couple days. They're going to fly into Jamaica. They're going to play Jamaica, and then you're going to fly back home. And we're flying
Mhm.
back from. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I can't. I'm like drawing a blank. You and I just had all these conversations, but like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like, anyway.
I think it was Costa Rica before Mexico.
Oh yeah. So right, so like like you said, like guys aren't sleeping. They're traveling here and there, going all over the place. So
Hmm.
all right, so then let's get into a little bit. So you had touched on the table, right? This is what the table looks like. This is where the group is set. Looking at the schedule, so we have Jamaica coming up. After
Hmm.
Jamaica, we get ourselves a break, right?
Yeah, pretty long one, like
Pretty
2 months.
Yeah, we're going to be playing back towards the end of January. And we're going to play, I believe it's El Salvador,
Yep.
Canada,
Yep. So
and I'd have to.
January 27th, we've got El Salvador. January 30th, we are in Canada, and then February 2nd, we are against Honduras at home.
Okay. And when you think about, so out of those teams, right, Honduras and El Salvador down at the bottom of the table,
Yep. Same with Jamaica down there.
right? I mean, you're looking at 13 goals against, the goal differential, 3 points, 6 points, like
Yep.
going nowhere, right? Just
Yeah.
just going nowhere. So where let's think of a couple hypotheticals then to entertain this. So obviously in this scenario, like we had sort of talked about, drawing Honduras and El Salvador, it's not great, but it's not bad.
Well, drawing El Salvador and Honduras this time around would be bad because we're going to be home. So
Okay.
the games against Honduras and El Salvador are in the U.S. And with those teams being at the bottom of the table, you have to expect 3 points in both games. So you're expecting 6 points out of those two games, and playing Canada in Canada with Canada sitting near the top of the table, right? One of the strong. They're pretty good. They're up there. They got 13 points. We have 14.
Right.
Right. So they're right there. They're right on us. Even if we lose that game, you can't get upset if we win the other two, because out of a possible 9, we're getting 6 points.
Right. And we're already atop Canada right now. So even if Canada, I mean, we're at the top of the table, right? So
On goal differential.
two
Yep.
teams can surpass us. I think looking at that road ahead, it's gonna be right now. Look like that Canada and Panama, right? it's going to be that Panama game. Because if you draw Panama, you're okay. But if you draw Panama and you draw Honduras and Panama beats Honduras,
correct.
Now you're putting yourself in a situation that is not looking so good. And I think, and this is probably just, the PTSD of watching USA during World Cup qualifying. It's kind of unfortunate to be in this position where here we are sitting at the top of the table and I'm still not convinced and I'm still not like feeling safe, even though logically watching the team, I feel safe. I feel confident. I don't see any reason why we're not going to qualify. But that being said, 5 years ago, I said the same thing. I don't see why we're not going to qualify. And then, a bunch of guys stumbling around the pitch, not making many things happen. So, I think outside of Mexico, Canada, and sorry, you go ahead.
No. So to touch on you saying we pretty much make it. So the U.S. played well in their wins. In the games they won, other than the game against Costa Rica, it was pretty much heavily the United States. So when they beat Honduras, we went down 1-0. We beat them 4-1. We beat Jamaica 2-0 when we played them. It was pretty much all the U.S. We beat Costa Rica 2-1. Yeah, Costa Rica scored really early, but then that game was all the U.S. Same with Mexico. So now we've played everyone once, top of the table. We flip it around, we play everyone again. Different home, different away. Obviously, if you played them home, you play them away now. But if we can come up with the same results, it doesn't have to be against the same teams, but just the same type of results. So 4 wins, 3 draws. Or 4 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. Sorry.
Yes.
4 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. If we come up with those exact same results, there's no way we don't get through sitting at the top of the table. Because if it's enough to put us,
way more than enough,
if it's enough to have us at the top of the table right now, it'll be enough to have us at the top of the table when it's all said and done.
Right. Agreed.
Or at least close enough to get through. Maybe not exactly the top, because Mexico could win all their games. You don't know. But it'll be enough that there's not enough leeway for other teams to catch up that the U.S. wouldn't make it.
Right. And so one last question before we get into some of the sort of like the semantics of the game and then really dive into players that really impressed us and start to really get back, because we sort of passed over the individual performances. If the United States doesn't win, if we don't come out in first in this group, disappointment or totally fine? Is it just about making it, or is it about sending a message?
So does this is something I don't actually know. So depending on where we finish, does that change our draws for the World Cup?
I believe that the groups themselves are determined by the strongest seeds.
Okay.
So I believe that like in the European group, it's the winners of things that are going to get to be the auto pool. So I do believe that I want to say the third place team, but that's a good question. I'd have to look that up. It should change it a little bit.
Regardless of that, the draws of the World Cup aren't known until everyone's done.
Correct.
So why would it matter if finishing in first, second, or third? You're still through. You don't know who you're going to get matched up against. I don't see how it could be a disappointment. You qualified for the World Cup. So if we finished in second, we get put in a group of death, where if we finished in third, we wouldn't have. But there's no way to know that. So you can't be disappointed
right
with your team qualifying. You have to be like, okay, cool. U.S. finished in third place in the group behind Canada and we'll say Mexico. Right? Who cares? We're still through. You get to go play in the World Cup.
Right. I agree.
That's where the disappointment would come in. If the U.S. goes to the World Cup and loses all 3 group stage games, that's a disappointment.
Correct. Yes, that's way more of a disappointment.
Yeah, but if the U.S. just qualifying for the World Cup, I don't think it matters what position they're in. I don't think you could consider it a disappointment.
I agree, and I think it's hard at times to have that mentality, but it is the right mentality to go, what is considered a victory here? A victory is doing the job that we set out to accomplish, and that job is qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sure, draws hurt, and sure, results are might be more disappointing. But at the end of the day,
Points a point.
If you win 1-0 over El Salvador on your
3 points.
on your only scoring chance, it doesn't matter, right? Like you don't have to earn like
six
this
nothing and
visual
1-0.
Correct.
You still get 3 points. You still get 3 points.
And I think some of the previous games with the way that the rosters that we've seen and the substitutions that have been made have unfortunately been in that direction, and it might have been harder for fans to swallow. But it was we did what we needed to do. Trust the process.
Yep.
Right? Like
you could win every game 1-0.
Draw. Yeah, and even though we're like, why did you go down there to get a draw? It's still like I don't want to bust my butt trying to win this game in these conditions. I'm looking at something else. So to go into a point that you had made, right, and it's going to be a little bit into the individual. So as we touch base on the individual talent of this, you noticed some interesting things about the second half. And what are those things that you noticed?
Mexico didn't do anything. It was almost like they got caught flat-footed the whole half. Every time they got the ball, it was almost immediately turned over, or they would start to move the ball up, and then our defense just played astoundingly well and took the ball right away, and then it was the U.S. building again. Yes, and at one point, I don't know if it was before our goal or after Christian Pulisic's goal there, when he came in, that the shots were 10-0 U.S. And that right there is a statement. Because Mexico is such a good team, for them to not have a single shot 30 minutes in to a half is unbelievable. And that just shows that how well the U.S. was playing in their midfield, in the defensive, in their half.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things I thought was absolutely wild, and I know that like most people probably get tired of hearing things like this, is that it's so frustrating to me to watch that first half where the United States essentially does the same thing. We come out hard, probably after about maybe 10 minutes. Mexico has a small stretch there. They don't really get any chances. They get the ball up into our attacking third. They have a couple like half shots.
So they had the breakaway.
They had the breakaway. So Zach Steffen makes, I think, like 2 really good saves. One exceptional save, one good save in that spell. But outside of that breakaway, nothing really too unusual, especially given that we're USA soccer fans, right? And we have this history of, I mean, we're talking over the last, if you get rid of the last 3 years and you go back before that, we had a history of being scored on in the first 6 minutes. I mean, we were like, fingers crossed we're going to get out of the first 10 minutes of the game and it's still going to be 0-0. So going with that, to have to, go into the locker room being like, wow, I can't believe that we're playing this well against Mexico, and then have to listen to the commentators tell us we're chasing the game. I didn't feel like we were chasing the game in the first half, and I think that your statements about the second half show that sure, there were stints, there were moments where the United States was, but I mean, we're probably 20-something, 30-something minutes into that first half, and you and I are going, how many times has the ball been on our half? And you can't.
Yeah, I agree with you that it is upsetting to see, like, you think the U.S. is playing so well. It feels like they're playing well. And then you have guys saying, wow, the U.S. really had to chase the ball around that half. And you're like, what? The U.S. is doing well. So to try to, like, give them some credit that maybe we are just thinking because we want to believe the U.S. was better. The U.S., to me, didn't have a very good scoring opportunity in the first half.
I can agree with that.
So for the Mexico to have a couple, to most people, you would think Mexico's playing better. Like when you look at the scoring chances, 2-0 first half, right? So, or something like that, somewhere in there. So to most people, that would be, wow, the U.S. has got to be not playing as good because Mexico's got the scoring opportunities. But yes, the U.S. had the ball the most of the time, but I don't think we ever really a threat with the ball. Where when Mexico got the ball, when they did get it over half, they did look threatening with the ball. So I could see people being like, wow, the U.S. is chasing the ball around. Because the only people actually having a chance of scoring is Mexico. But I don't really think either team really dominated the first half until near the end of the first half when the U.S. started to take over the game.
Yeah, and I know that typically the United States struggles in that final third, right? That's where like most teams make their money. It's one thing to have a solid defense. It's one thing to have a solid midfield who can possess the game. But your midfield sort of becomes a non-factor if you don't have guys who can get the job done up front. And we definitely we struggled with that, to say the least, in that first half. And
it hurts with Pulisic being injured. Like that, like there's no, you can't sugarcoat it. He's our best striker. Yeah, he's our number 10, but he's our best player on the team, and to not have him for almost every World Cup, like that's another thing that US should be proud of. We haven't had him for almost every World Cup qualifying game. He got injured pretty early. He's been out, and we're still at the top of the table
against Honduras, right? And he's still not even, and
he only played 15, 20 minutes of that game,
right?
And he had an impact. Like he came on 4 minutes later, he scores.
Correct. He had a huge impact, and it's a sentiment and a big statement when Chelsea's coach, a couple weeks into his injury, is telling their media, we can't wait to have him back on the pitch. So for us to be pulling the results that we're pulling without him, and we had a couple games where Weston McKennie didn't travel with us. So we were down Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic.
It's like saying Argentina, you have to play Brazil without Messi. Right?
Right, and then having Argentina beat Brazil 4-0.
Correct. And I get like, okay, but Pulisic did come in our game against Mexico. So it's like, okay, Argentina, you have to beat Brazil 2-0, but you can't bring Messi in until the 70th minute. Right?
Right.
And just for us to have 4 wins, right? 2 draws, a loss without Pulisic, basically, it's huge.
It is huge. So look at getting sort of like continuing that with some of the other players. As we move around the back, like thinking out of like 10, right? Like, you just started playing the new year of FIFA, right? Your FIFA game, players getting rated.
Yeah.
So as we rotate around the field, right? Let's think about just some sort of like number that you would assign for these players, right? So we have, and I'm trying to pull it up just so I can make sure that I get the right guys. So let's start in the back, right? There's been a lot of controversy over, is Zach Steffen the guy, right? Zach Steffen, is he the guy that we're supposed to see back there? So how do you feel about having Zach Steffen in goal?
So watching him play the game, and he played the game against Costa Rica and allowing that goal early, I was a little worried. Since that moment, I don't think he's allowed a goal that could have been saved. Right?
But is that the determining factor? Is that the determining factor?
No,
whereas
it shouldn't
you have
be,
Matt Turner, who's consistent. So Zach Steffen's playing backup. Granted, he's playing backup for Manchester City, right?
Correct.
Correct. I mean, so we know that his in-camp practices are stellar. He's got some quality stuff. But he's not playing week in and week out, whereas Matt Turner, well, maybe way less quality of the players that he's playing with. He's playing week in and week out. He's fresh. He's ready to go. He's connected with all the players throughout the entire camp. He's connected through multiple different cups now, and had to come in when Zach Steffen got hurt, and it, basically stood on his head. And I don't know if we've seen any moments in Matt Turner like that sort of. I don't even know what I would call that goal against Costa Rica, because outside of Zach Steffen just basically choosing to let the ball go in the net.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. Like, yes, Matt Turner plays unbelievable and can stand on his head and make those saves. But something I have noticed as being a goalie myself, Zach Steffen's better with his feet than Matt Turner is. Matt Turner kicking the ball out of the back tends to turn it over a lot. I haven't noticed that with Zach Steffen. So that's huge, because the U.S. tends to go back to their goalie with balls, and you don't want your goalie to turn it over. That's never good. So to watch Zach Steffen not turn the ball over when he has to use his feet or he's playing the ball out of the back, that's huge, because that's where you can start building, and I think that helps. And Matt Turner struggles there. Now, I'm not saying he's bad at it. I'm just saying Zach Steffen, in my eyes, is much better with the ball at his feet than Matt Turner is.
I can agree with that. When you look at the rest of the back four, let's back up even further. When you looked at the starting lineup for Mexico, how did you feel about it? What was your gut reaction to that starting lineup?
There's a couple of guys I always think like, oh God, why is this guy starting over this guy? But but generally, like we had Ricardo Pepe was starting up front. I like that. I like his work ethic. I like his ability to finish. Yeah, he didn't get a goal, but I thought he played very well throughout the whole game. Walker Zimmerman, you got starting and like holding that back four together. He's got both Robinsons with him and Yedlin. Yedlin gets beat a couple times, which gives Mexico their chances, but you also have to think Yedlin got beat and a couple of times, and Walker Zimmerman bails him out. That right there is that man should be starting every game. If he's not hurt and he's not on a yellow card suspension or anything, that man needs to start. He held the back four together and was probably our best player in the 2-0 win over Mexico by just keeping the back four in unison, working as one, and basically negating all of Mexico's chances.
Yeah, and he's played on some of our rosters in games before, and I've never felt that way about him in those games. This was definitely an eye-opening experience for me, interacting and watching him play. I would say one of the things, and I know we talk about this, and some people, like I've already expressed my previous sort of like irritations. I am not a fan of DeAndre Yedlin, to put it lightly, and I wouldn't have had him on my roster 5 years ago, so I'm equally as lost as to why we're seeing him now, especially with the depth that we have. And I hear everybody's arguments, and I understand having experience in your back four, having people who can play against these higher quality teams, who don't have experience playing against these higher quality teams. And I get all that, and I like all of that. That being said, as your standard, DeAndre Yedlin gets beat down that flank so consistently that when Miles Robinson is on that side, that's not the case. We saw that in the Canada game. Where
definitely.
The very first time, and I'm going to forget the striker's name for Canada, phenomenal striker. The very first time, it's, it'll come to me. The very first time he got free.
Alphonso Davies? You looking for that man?
Alphonso Davies. The very first time he got free against Yedlin, torched him. And it was like, and I get that might not be a fair assessment to DeAndre Yedlin because Davies is a phenomenal player. And
Alphonso Davies seems to be faster on the ball than almost every other player without the ball.
Right, and he was definitely somebody where people, we went into that game with people saying this is the best player in CONCACAF. And before the game, I was like, I don't know about that. I'm thinking it's Pulisic. I'm thinking we got those guys. After the game, I'm thinking, as far as the strikers going, he's got to be it. He was the most dangerous guy. So, not to try to take anything away from DeAndre Yedlin, but when you have a guy like Miles Robinson who was making those marks and doing the job that needed to get done with way less experience and with what they would want you to believe is way less talent, I don't see any reason, why that was in there, but that's just my 2 cents on it. Moving up into the midfield, so we're our 4-3-3 now.
Let me just say something about Yedlin. So as much as I do agree with you that he gets beat a lot, the thing he's got that our other defenders don't is the composure to make the right ball. And it shows. He's got a couple really nice assists. He knows when to make the runs. He's not the quickest guy out there, but every so often I've noticed when he gets the ball, he doesn't tend to try to dribble through guys. He'll make a pass where Miles Robinson, because he's got that speed, tries to beat guys, and sometimes that leads to turnovers. Now, I know that doesn't, just because he's got a good foot and making passes and crosses doesn't mean he should get the start if he's getting blown out of the water on the back, but it's one of the more positive things that you can say about him because he does, with that experience, know what to do when he gets the ball.
Yeah, and for sure, I completely agree with that. I think I actually had to put my foot in my mouth in that game with the assist that you're talking about, because I just basically finished venting about how I couldn't believe he was on the pitch, and they just knocked a ball to him out wide. He beat his man. He swung a ball in, and I think Zardes just knocked a header in, and we were both like, wow, what a great ball. So I agree with you there. I still share, though, that my hope in the future is that we have a back who can sort of replace him. But I think going to talk about something way more exciting, the last time I looked at the United States midfield, I actually was not able to come up with a single player that I wanted to see in our midfield outside of Stuart Holden. And this is, we're talking, he's been hurt and retired. So, we, going through areas where I would be like, I don't know who we're going to put in this midfield. And all of a sudden, here we are, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Yunus Musa,
Timothy Weah.
Buzio. What's his first name?
Gianluca Buzzi.
Gianluca Buzio.
Timothy Weah.
Timothy Weah, yes. Like, they have him also playing up in the front, but yeah, like seeing him out and swinging out in the wings.
And then every so often, even Aaronson's in the midfield.
Yeah, and it's not Sam Vines. It's Matt
Dest?
Sands, maybe. Matt Sands, maybe. Des is playing the right back for us, but yeah, he attacks like he attacks like it. So yeah, and I guess like we could touch base on all those things later, and that's probably why Yedlin's in. But going back to the midfield, this midfield is good. Am I wrong?
No, and it shows when we've got the guys in there that know what they're doing. The U.S. controls the game, and you control the game through the midfield. So when the U.S. has the midfield in, the guys in that know how to play with the ball at their feet, can get open for the other guys, and we can knock the ball around. You run into the problem that Mexico ran into, and you don't get to touch the ball, and you spend the whole game running around, and then you're exhausted, and you end up losing.
With so many guys that can possess the ball the way that we have it, right? We've watched Gianluca Buzio, it just hit quality, ball after quality ball, right? Composed in the midfield, deliverances, through balls, great, creating scoring opportunities. Yunus Musa with his ability to just be big in the midfield, dribble. The United States' desire, tactics-wise, just to play through Tyler Adams. Weston McKennie's experience, his pace, and then I think there's definitely something that people don't touch base on a little bit, which is just that he gets those guys fired up. There's just something about and there's something about his personality chatting with the other players. You look at Tim Weah being able to play on the outside. You look at Christian Pulisic being somewhere in that mix. Did it surprise you that the United States didn't play a 4-4-2 and put somebody like slide Yunus Musa in with Tyler Adams, or put a Gianluca Buzio in there with Tyler Adams to help with the distribution of the ball and give him more chances? Whereas we saw the 4-3-3 pushing Timothy Weah out wide, putting Ricardo Pepi up as that center striker, and pushing Brendan Aronson out ahead of McKennie.
I mean, it's going to depend on who we're playing against. Each team is going to be a different lineup, and I think Berhalter has done a fantastic job with how he sets up his game plan. Because as much as you may not like his starting lineups, and I know there's been a couple of times where you and me get upset because he makes 8 changes or 9 changes to the starting lineup, the man knows how to make substitutes, and he knows how to initiate a game plan. Because, yeah, the U.S. scores most of their goals in the second half. But what happens in the second half? Berhalter makes subs. Subs come on, they immediately have an impact. So,
what is the stat on his subs? Like you and I were keeping track at one point. Aren't through the last 5 games? Is it like all but 1 goal have come from his subs?
Yep. And actually, all goals have come from subs if you count the assists.
That's true.
So as much as you're like, wow, I can't believe we went from this starting lineup to only 2 guys in it are the same, right? And people are like, you're not going to build chemistry if you don't play with the same guys, but it's working. And as much as you might not like it, he seems to know what he's doing.
He does, and giving him that benefit of the doubt was easier for me at the beginning, and harder for me now. And I think the reason it was easier for me at the beginning was because this is the U.S. team that I wanted to see. These were young players from overseas that everybody knew was there and just couldn't figure out why we couldn't get other players out of the spotlight, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Miles Robinson is not 21 years old. He's 24, going on 25 years old. He was 19, 20 years old when that last World Cup was rolling around, and we didn't even know who he was. Now, granted, maybe he hadn't developed then. Maybe he just really hit this burst and came onto it, right? Like Brendan Aronson hit it younger, right? Christian Pulisic hit it younger. We still have all of these players now that have given us absolutely no reason. Like, it's kind of like we finally got the media out of the way. We know about these players, and there's no going back. And all the credit to Berhalter for doing that he grabbed all these players, he looked overseas, and I've read a lot of his reports, I've listened to some of his interviews. He is mentioning players that are playing overseas that you haven't even heard of, just letting the media know, hey, we got our eyes on this guy, and he's in great form. If he keeps it up, we're going to bring him in. If he doesn't, I don't know. And we see that with like people wondering, why is John Brooks not in this camp? Now, I know a lot of people love John Brooks. I'm in the boat of, let's get these guys out of here, right? I've never been a John Brooks fan. Not that I thought he was a bad player. I never thought John Brooks was a bad player. I've never liked our defense. I've never liked any of the composure of any of the guys back there. I didn't like the boom ball. I'm glad that John Brooks isn't playing anymore. I'm happy to see our entire midfield vanish. I'm glad we finally have strikers up in the front that can do this thing. So I love that, even though I have to swallow that hard pill with Greg Berhalter making 8 changes, 6 changes, and then subbing another 4, and maybe having to suffer through a Sebastian Lletget in our midfield or a DeAndre Yedlin on the right back, that it's working and it's getting the job done, and it is keeping players healthy and rested. You know what I love to see?
Yeah, and you also have to remember that these World Cup qualifying games are playing in really quick succession. So I think back in September we had 3 games in 6 days. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yes.
So we played on the 2nd of September, the 5th, and the 8th. So you get 3 days in between each.
It was hot then too.
Then you go into October, right? So from September 8th, the next game is October 7th. So you don't even get a month. So then it's October 7th, October 10th, October 13th. So another 3 games in 6 days.
On top of these players playing every Sunday or Saturday for their club teams.
So it's understandable that you got to make some changes to the starting lineup, and I understand that. So like you got to give them a little bit of credit, but still, as a fan, when you're getting ready to watch the game and you pull up the starting 11 and you see like 8 differences, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, but, and I think a lot of that is like a good frustration, right? We're so excited about these young guys coming up that we just want to keep seeing them play because we want to see more games like this Mexico game. We want to sit down and watch a game where we just can't believe we've had the ball all game and we've had all these chances. And we watch these young guys come into their own. So we'll get into kind of like a fun topic here at the end as we go to wrap this thing up. And the thing that I have up on the screen right now is refereeing again. Like, we're going to talk about this again. Like, how is this still a topic? And I'm in the same boat, and I'm lost. And I'm not in the loss of why don't we have VAR? That doesn't bother me. I don't care. I'm in a loss of how do we have so many games? Like, I'm in a loss of words right now. So many games get so out of control, and it feels like there's nothing that CONCACAF has done that has made a difference in these games. And especially with Mexico, right? I mean, there was one, what was it, like the Gold Cup final where it was like refereed into oblivion and like everything was a foul. And the game might have been dull and boring from that stance, but we didn't have to deal with the garbage getting thrown, the players trying to fight one another, the outrageous tackles. And you had mentioned this and reminded me of this moment. And I was outraged when it happened, but poor Brendan Aronson.
Yeah, so for anyone who didn't watch, early in the second half, Brendan Aronson gets tackled by, was it Hector Herrera?
No, it wasn't Herrera. I wish it was Herrera. It was, what was the guy's name who tackled him? I could find it. Was it Corona?
Maybe. So he gets tackled by a guy, and it's a foul.
Corona or Lozano.
And it's a foul, but it's not a yellow card.
It
the initial tackle is not a yellow card. Then, as Aronson is going to get up, the guy stands on top of him and pushes him into the ground. Basically, like, right on top of him, you can't get up. So right here, I'm starting to be like, whoa. And the referee's blowing his whistle and he's coming over. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be dealt with. But at this point, it's already too late. There's like 4 guys on each team already gathered.
Luis Alfonso Rodriguez.
Okay. So Rodriguez is standing on top of Aronson, and it's already too late. Referee's coming over. There's like 4 guys from each team already, gathering at this location of this incident. And as the referee gets right on top of him, Aronson is now on his butt, going to like sit up. And Rodriguez reaches down with his hand, grabs him by like the nose and the eyes, looks like he scrapes him, trying to pull him up to his feet. Though the referee is too close to see it. And this just blows up because Weston McKennie sees it. So now he's over there because his job is grit. I'm the big guy. I'm going over there to support my team. So he's trying to basically fight. So now you've got 8 guys on each team gathering. But the referee missed this.
Yeah, even Zach Steffen's coming over.
Yes, and even Zach Steffen comes running over, which I believe there is a new rule where the goalies cannot cross half except on a set piece.
Okay, because I was wondering that because when the referee handed him that yellow card, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like he didn't do anything card worthy.
Yeah, so I believe the new rule is a goalie cannot come over half during something like that unless it's a set piece. So because they hadn't set up yet, I believe he's just getting a yellow card for that. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not sure if that's true because I've looked and I have not been able to find anything on why he got it.
Right, but looking at Rodriguez, I mean, the rule is any attempt to injure towards a player's head with your head, not with your head. If it's directed at another player's head, it's a red card.
Correct, but someone's got to see it. Somebody
does have to see it. So, we really believe that referee?
He's too close.
So
if you go back and watch, the referee is too close, and he's looking at Rodriguez. He's not looking down. So it's almost going to be impossible for him to see it because it's going to be at the bottom of his vision. Now the linesman that would be on that side is being blocked by all of the players, and then the other one's on the other side of the field. So there's no way anyone's going to be able to see it.
Right, but I'm getting at this is like a history in CONCACAF that you got to repeatedly suffer through games that the tackles get out of hand. Things that should have get carded don't get called. And I'm not saying we got to hand out red cards in any of these games by any means, but we have so many instances in these Mexico games, and you just look at the history of it where, man, a card here or there might have toned this game down, and it's not even just that you might have missed yellow cards or red cards. It's when you watch the referees in the game, they just look lost. They look like the game is moving too fast. It's moving at too great of a pace. There's so much happening, and the only thing that was relieving to me was that if you look at the way that Clint Dempsey and Aguchi Onyewu would have handled that previous situation and the way Weston McKennie does it, it looks the same to an extent. And actually, I'm going to put Clint Dempsey in Weston McKennie's boat. We had a lot we had a lot of younger guys for the United States before that played in the MLS that were really honestly trying to fight Mexican players. Weston McKennie's smarter than that. Clint Dempsey was smarter than that. They got right to the line, and then they said, try something.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like Weston McKennie's grit in, I know where the boundaries are, and I know that I'm not going to do anything to you, and I know you're trying to get me to do something to you, so I'm going to do it right back. And I think that composure helps his younger players in those situations so we don't see things escalate like that. But, and I know I've talked to you about this, and I think, yes, okay, VAR, not in the World Cup qualifying games, but what you could do is throw in just a video review for fouls, right? So it doesn't happen in the game, right? But give it to him after the game. So go back and look at it, realize, yep, that should have been a red card. Give him a red card, he misses the next 2 games. Right? Yeah, it doesn't affect the game that it's in, but it gets people to realize, okay, if I do something and it doesn't get caught in the game, it's still going to get caught. Right, it's like the Brendan Shanahan committee. Right? Like
exactly.
For the NHL, you got a group of people that are watching afterwards.
Perfect that you bring that up. So the NHL, you might not know this, at some point went to 2 refs, 2 main referees, because one referee couldn't see everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's only 10 players on the ice, and hockey has 2 refs. Right. You got 20 guys on the field. That's bigger than an ice rink. And you got 1 referee?
Yeah. I mean, and
Put another one out there.
And I know that less of the guys are involved in the play every single time, but you just tend to see over and over again that the problem with VAR is that VAR is really good for objective decisions. Was the ball out of
Correct.
bounds? Did he make contact with the ball beforehand? We've seen the problem with it with offsides, which is that if you're going to review offsides, then it's going to actually be like crystal clear, and it's going to be like laser precision. He
Correct.
was 1 millimeter offsides, so he's offsides. And
Correct.
I don't think a lot of people were a big fan of that. Instead, they were hoping VAR was going to come in a situation like this and say, that guy deserves a red card. That's not going to fix the game, because you're, re-refereeing the game is not going to fix it. But I like where you're saying is that we're not going to re-referee the game right now, but we are going to have people watching the game so that we can make sure, hey, that player did something out of line, and we
And
missed.
if it's bad enough, do it right then. If it's bad enough, do it right then. Think about okay, so if you missed, we'll go back to an incident, the Zinedine Zidane headbutt. Right? Let's go way back before VAR. Now, yes, I know he got the red card because one of the officials says he saw it. Who knows? That's already plus Zinedine Zidane said he headbutted him because the guy said something, but regardless. So say that gets missed in the US-Mexico game. And that's really bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stop the game right there with VAR and give him a red card. Right? But for things like that are that bad. Now, I don't think this one is one of those where you need to stop the game right away and give him the red card because, and I don't want to say that what he did wasn't malicious and he intended to hurt, but when you watch Aronson get up, he's got no marks on his face. Right? So as much as you want to say the Mexico guy was going out to hurt him, because it definitely looked like he was, Aronson gets up, he doesn't even have red scratches on his face. So does he really get a hold of him? Maybe not.
Right. Yeah, the acting comes into play there. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. And so getting away from trying to draw a better line and having only really extreme things happening in this.
Correct.
But yeah, and I know that it can be hard. I know we got to suffer through this, and you're going to hear, if you've been watching, the games and listen to the people like we have, you're just going to hear the commentators and the former players saying this is CONCACAF and this is what it is and how much they loved it and stuff. And I think that to an extent, yeah, it's understandable that there's going to be a difference in the environment. There's going to be a difference in the refereeing. It's not the EPL. It's never going to be the EPL. It doesn't have to be the EPL. It's CONCACAF, and there's something beautiful about that. But at the same time, we can still be doing something about the quality of the referees that we have, especially when you look at the rosters for both of these squads, Mexico and the United States.
Yeah, there's a difference. Overseas. There's a difference between letting the guys play and letting them try to kill each other.
Correct.
So
yeah.
Well, but speaking of red cards, Miles Robinson.
That's true. We didn't really touch base on that one. Yeah. So Miles Robinson, dragging him down right for that second yellow card. You think that's necessary?
Yeah. So the only one I don't think was
that it's not a yellow card. Do you think that making that foul was necessary?
So his first yellow card was unnecessary. That's the one that I think was the stupid yellow card. The second one he takes, I think, is the smart. I think that's the smart foul. You always hear about people saying that, you got to take the foul here. I think he has to. Otherwise, that guy, now, yes, we're up 2-0. But if you don't bring that guy down,
you let Mexico back in the game, right?
He's basically on a breakaway. Now, I know people are like, well, he can catch up to him or you got coverage coming over. But when you really look at it, everyone's mostly out of position. He's got to do it. He's got to at least impede the guy enough to let his team get back. And it happened to be a yellow card. And I think that's the smart call, that one. The first one, not even close. He should not have stepped into that guy. There was no reason for that. He's not the last defender. Mexico's not even in a scoring position. And he takes a yellow card in the first half.
I agree. That first one was silly.
So
yeah. So coming up, we know there's going to be a game against Jamaica here in a couple days. Ryan and I are going to be back, hopefully bringing you another podcast on that one. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to this Extra Time Soccer podcast.
That Jamaica game is going to be tough. The U.S. is down McKinney and Robinson, and it's in Jamaica. So
it is. So it's going to be something worth watching. Definitely looking to come away with the 3 points there, but as like we said, draws are not necessarily the end of the world. So
on the road,
that's right, on the road. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the Extra Time U.S. Soccer Podcast. We thank everybody for listening, tuning in, watching the video. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, hit that like button, the subscribe button, and get notified. We are going to be trying to have videos coming out weekly, but we do understand, as Ryan mentioned, some of these games coming out in quick progression. So in those timetables, expect more videos a little bit quicker. That's going to do it for us. Thanks again for tuning in, and take care.